Hey, Jerome, welcome, brother.
You on a
What?
roll today.
So it goes.
You on
This is my
a
my
roll
day to
today,
do
Jesse.
it. Yes, we're always rolling, right? Rolling and flowing.
Rolling and flowing. You and glowing. You know.
Yeah,
I
heck
see
yeah.
you earlier. I was on my walk while I was watching you in the beehive.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for joining. I appreciate. You always have such great questions, brother. Like very thoughtful questions. That just really it helps hone a conversation, but also helps just with thought thinking, you know.
I'm glad. You bring them out of me. I was just during the conversation, just listening to the both of you, and as you were speaking to each other, I just start getting intrigued. I start getting like one of my friends, Nida, she says, a curiosity came to me. That's how she says it. A curiosity came to me. So I get all these curiosities when I listen to you speak, and so it just incites more questions. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's what you're saying reminds me of like when we were on retreat together in Sedona, and Tom was talking about like the class teaches itself. You know, he starts a conversation with some idea, but then pretty soon everybody has stuff to share, and everyone's like, oh yeah, and just further, proof that there's only one of us here,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that we're all
I like that.
connected as one, and we
I
all
like
we're all seeking the same answers, to the same questions,
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
of us together are smarter than any one of us could be by ourselves. So
Right. Like what they say, two heads are better than one, you know?
yeah,
Yeah. And I like what you said, Jesse. It teaches itself. Like they say, each one teach one to reach one. And one of the other things that you're teaching me, Jesse, I don't know if you realize it, but you're up leveling my vocabulary.
hmm.
You've been giving me all sorts of words. I was like, oh, I never knew about that. I need to go to the dictionary. What is this one? Like today you taught me scant,
Yes.
scant. And I know about scant. You said back in the days that when money was scant or when resources were scant, I was like, scant, let me look up that. And then another day you said inculcating. I was like, what is that?
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. You're so thoughtful that you actually like you're a good wordsmith, someone who's I think of as being a wordsmith, and that you pay attention to words and their meaning, and you're like always trying to wonder more deeply about these things, and that's beautiful.
Wow.
We need more of that in the world, more deep thinking, deep feeling people.
Thank you.
Is
Thank you. And when did you get such a fascination when it came to words, or upping your vernacular when it came to your vocabulary? Like, did that happen organically, or did you actually intentionally, increase your capacity in that way?
That's an interesting question. It's like, growing up, I grew up in a scientific community, um, and it's like one of the top schools in the world, or I mean, in the nation, like top 10, and I always thought I was kind of a dummy, because I just wasn't interested in like, it was very science based and math based and stuff like that, and academic based, and I was always more interested in like music and crafts and like arts, you know and so all these people around me always just I viewed as so smart, but I remember it was probably what got me into words more deeply was I had this great friend, this guy, his name is Maddie, he's passed now. He was my best friend in high school, and he was really, really smart, but he was more like me in that he was more into like creative things, you know. We were kind of like the oddballs at our school, you know, uh, and we were both like hippies, in a school full of jocks and academic type people, you know, and we were working with spirit medicine and stuff like that. We started reading. I didn't realize I liked words and books and thought until around that time when I started reading like Henry David Thoreau and books on philosophy. That's what got me reading ultimately. My mom was a librarian. So words have always been like a thing, she knows like 5 different languages, and like, she's amazing in that way, and she was always reading books and always trying to encourage me to read books. But I liked, certain books of poetry like Shel Silverstein or like stories, but I didn't really hook into reading until like I was like 18, and I started reading books on philosophy, and I was like, wow, now this is interesting, and then you just start reading words, and you may not understand them at first, but there's almost like a feeling of intimation because of the context of the other words of like what this word means. And I just fell in love with studying. We had a conversation, you and I, about this a little bit when we were in Sedona, about like, there's the whole thing of our original thought and our original brilliance that is innate, versus reading books and gathering wisdom from other people, and I really personally benefit from a blend of those things, but it was almost like I had to have some of those thoughts and feelings first for me to relate to the books,
Okay. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I would have never known, I would have never known. So you said, so your mom was a librarian.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So did you hang out at the library by proxy, or was it only later, like you said, when you turned 18, that you really kind of fell in love with that?
I kind of always loved books, and I loved the library just because it was like a quiet place with like, I don't know, I felt it to be like this repository of information, that was cool, but I had no interest in it other than that my mom was there, and we'd go pick her up from work or whatever, or like go see her momentarily at the library. And I always loved media in the forms of like music and movies, more so, as a kid, but it took a while, like I said, for me to have like some more of these like authentic experiences through starting to practice with meditation, working with vision plant medicine, where I started like, I think everyone goes through that to different degrees, but it's almost like an existential crisis that happens, I think, for most people around, just the beginning of adulthood, especially since we don't really have like, initiations anymore, but I just felt this whole thing of like, I think a lot of people feel this, you just start questioning, why am I here? What is my purpose? What is this place? What are we doing? I was just hungry for answers,
Right.
and for meaning,
Right.
and
And it's almost like, what is it? Man's search for meaning. I heard that there was a man's search for meaning, like Viktor Frankl or somebody who wrote that one. But when you said you got into philosophy, did that kind of satiate that hunger, that search for meaning with philosophy?
well, I always felt the meaning with music, so much, but definitely I needed that piece too, philosophy and poetry. Music, philosophy, and poetry have been guiding my life for, at least 28 years,
Okay. So what was the combination of philosophy and poetry that blended together for you so perfectly, like that came in harmony with that marriage of those two?
I mean, I think, the first book that really blended those perfectly for me was the Tao Te Ching, and where it was like, I'd been studying, first I started studying like the Greek philosophers and all that stuff, and it was all very, heady, and I kind of liked that. I kind of got off on that for a while, but then I wanted to get really down to the truth of things, and then I started to gravitate much more to Eastern philosophies, you know, Indian philosophy and Tibetan, you know, and Chinese and um, all those kinds of systems of worldviews, you know, that were, it's something I felt since I was a kid. It's kind of interesting, you know, this whole conversation, like I was having with Nabiha earlier today. Also, of how much this stuff comes in with you when you're a kid. I remember watching like kung fu movies, like Bruce Lee, and he'd be there doing his thing, you know, and there's Buddhas in the background in these forests, and I was like, oh, you know, like that's it, you know, that's it, man, you know, and it was almost like a memory. It felt like watching that stuff, and I gravitated to it. Not in, you know, Native American lifestyle. I, you know, live here in New Mexico, and I remember going once to the deer dance with my mother. She took me to the deer dance, which they do in the wintertime, you know, to honor the deer, you know, and they're, you know, going to do a hunt, and they do a feast, and they invite everybody who's there at the dance. You can go walk into their houses and have dinner with them. And I remember like it just captivating my imagination so much, and going around places like, there's this place called Bandelier here, which was like a 10,000 Native American people lived here, just, you know, 30 miles from my house that way, you know, and go into these cave dwellings and petroglyphs and things. And there was something that just like really called to me about like just the ancientness and the naturalness, natural living, you know, and meaningful, deep spiritual connection with everything, you know, that, you know, that was all meshed in with, at the same time, with like Transformers and Hot Pockets and like, you know, all, you know what I mean? So, but that really caught my attention and awareness, and attracted me, you know, and so.
Yeah. Wow, I wouldn't have known that either, Jesse. I'm learning so much about you today. Like Transformers, what did they say? More than meets the eye. That was the Transformers, more than meets the eye. Transformers, robots in disguise. Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay,
Go
ahead.
It's just funny that you bring that up, because that's something that Kazu and I were talking about yesterday, about breatharianism and consciousness, and how this vehicle is like a receiver transmitter for the consciousness on a crazy level. But like we're all like transformers, like and I'm thinking more in terms of like electrical current, you know, that it has to be able to go, you have to grow into breatharianism. You can't just stop eating, right? You got to like cultivate, like you and I are doing, qigong, meditation, like time in nature, exercise, like sexual temperance, like all these things, you know, and it's a habit that builds and you grow, you know, and it's so this energy can move through you. And same with like, you know, for instance, money. Money is currency, you know. There's so many people that win the lottery and then blow it all, or even get into debt because they go on big spending sprees, and they don't know how to manage the energy, you know, and that this vessel and this consciousness has to slowly grow into the capacity to have that kind of energy flowing through it, or it will break, you know.
Right.
So anyway,
no,
there's a total aside.
That's a very good analogy, you know, very good example, you know, Transformers, you know, and you briefly mentioned, Jesse, about sexual temperance. And I don't know if we've ever gotten into it, but how would you say sexual temperance has played a role in your life, especially being inside of a household?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super key. Like I said, like I was really inclined towards like this Eastern philosophy, and even as a young man, you know, like in college, I studied, you know, Buddhism, and I was spending time at the monastery, you know, and I really like got hooked into my mind this whole thing of like celibacy for spiritual growth, you know, that, and it's something that I've come to learn and study more about, of like this, your sexual fluid is your cerebral spinal fluid, and the more it circulates, the more it refines, and it is light. That's why, you know, like at sex crime scenes, they use a fluorescent, a black light, because it phosphoresces. It's actually light, you know, and this is the Kundalini energy, and it should be in natural human beings living naturally and with some of these practices as part of our understanding of our natural bodies. Like we should be having an enlightenment experience every month, every one of us, because there's a physical, psycho-spiritual seed that is born and circulates, and it can just rise up. The Kundalini can rise up, and I forget which. They talk about the Ida and the Pingala. One is your cerebral spinal fluid, the other is blood, and one dumps into the pineal gland and the other into the pituitary gland. And this is like basically an orgasm for your brain, and that we could be in these bliss states, that are completely natural, and but we have to be in alignment with the Tao, be in alignment with the nature, with the nature of our body, of our true nature as individual spirits, and so sexual temperance has become something I was cultivating. And then it was funny because my wife and I both had relationships, and we were like, yeah, it's too sticky. We both swore them off, and we both thought we would I was going to be a monk, she was going to be a nun, and this just so happened that the timings of such as we had both kind of relinquished thoughts of that, and then we found each other. And that's how it often works, right? As soon as you let the thing go is when it will come to you, right? And we found our natural connection. We were like, okay, and then it was on, and we had 3 kids, like really young. I was 21, she was 19. And we were all ahead full. But over time, in the setting of the family, I had to regain my mental health and my physical health, and I had been losing too much of my sexual fluids, through our connection, through our union. Shadow of the dog wants to go outside. Come inside. Sorry. And so at a certain point, I had to basically go back to that sense of monasticism and being like, I really have to honor my spirit and everything right now, and I can't do this, And so that's the thing about a marriage too. When you're in it for the long run, and if you're in it with the right person, this is like your spiritual friend. It's so much more than when you're young, you're just raging full of hormones and everything's just blasting, But if you're going to be in a long-term 20, 30, 40, 60-year relationship, there's got to be a whole lot more than sex involved. You got to have a lot more reasons to connect and to be in love, and her and I share. So there's a lot of things we find that we differ on, and being okay with that. And there's a lot of things we love herbalism, we love our boys, we love being in nature and taking walks. We love talking about, esoteric philosophy and, manifestation, and we love serving our community. We, have a business together, doing permaculture, doing herbalism, helping people do cleansing and, health stuff. And so there's so many other things that nourish our relationship, but, I think that's something that happens naturally with everybody, even if you don't have these intentions or feelings towards becoming a monk or yogic aspirations or breatharianism or anything like that, but that was part of my drive, my inspiration.
Okay. Wow. So both of you, neither of you had actually planned that. You actually were going to just drop it all together, and then as soon as you let go, you said you found each other. You came together.
Okay.
Yeah. That is very,
it's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that's part of this thing of manifestation I've been totally interested in for a long time and studying, and I'm sure our whole community is gaining more awareness about how this works. About how it's about your vibration, etc. But what happens a lot, you may be familiar with Abraham Hicks. Do you know Abraham Hicks? This whole thing of we're constantly putting out desires. There's constantly stuff we want, and that's a natural thing. you know. But then what we'll do is we'll be either putting out so many desires, or we'll be holding on to this thing so much in terms of uh, like we may want it, but we feel like it's not happening. You know what I mean? And we're feeding that energy, and so it's keeping it blocked. You know, and as soon as you let it go, then those things come in. You know, because you've already put it out into the universe. The universe is going to deliver it to you as soon as you stop resisting it actually happening. You know.
Right. So when it came to that energy, like you said, you know, with sexual temperance, that there were times that you would find yourselves more or less refined when it came to the depletion of the secretion, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So when it came to that, what have you observed, you know, with this generation and the next generation coming up, that they kind of underestimate about that vital fluid, you know, within the vessel?
Yeah, I think there's growing understanding about it actually, and definitely actually with the youth, I see it with my boys where they have more consciousness about it than I did,
Mm.
you know. And that was my hope, of course, is to, you know, share that, give them as many tools as possible for their success and health and growth, and, you know. But it's that thing of like, you know, really, we're all leaders in a way, and especially if you are leading your family, you know, and it's much more important what you model than what you say, you know. So there, there's that thing, and that becomes like sort of a way in which we can help the next generation by modeling, you know, those truths and sharing the wisdom of them in the words, you know. But it is something that I feel like, you know, it's just like any plant or anything in creation. When a plant flowers and fruits and everything, it's depleting its vital life energy, you know. And it's the same thing with our, you know, sexual energy. Is that is your life force. It's what creates life, you know. Um, and you know, like I'd love to see the day like the Egyptians used to, like an alkalite, someone who was like seeking to be an adept. They would go through their like mystery school, you know, and it was, you know, you had to go through the right eye Horus and the left eye of the one's Horus and one's Osiris. There's the masculine and the feminine, you know, and you had to face your fears and go through physical challenges and all these things, but then you also had to develop your intuitive abilities and your psychic abilities, etc. And you'd be celibate and you'd be cultivating this energy, you know. And at the height of, well, I think it was in the 33rd year, you know, the 33 vertebrae of the spine, you know, and once you turn 33, where you're like at like maturation, you know, two adepts would connect, and the whole thing of the Ankh is like a reverberation tool, right? And so the idea was that you would channel this energy. Most times when we make love, you know, the energy kind of blows out of the top of our heads. And the Ankh is about recirculating it between the two couples, or the couple, and that this life force energy, they said it could lead to immortality if you did this, right? You know, so and imagine the beings you create with that kind of intentionality, where you've refined yourself, your masculine and your feminine. You refined your sexual energy by letting it circulate and not like wasting it. And then with intention, you connect with another adept and you recirculate this vital life energy into creating, you know, like a super being. You know what I mean?
Wow. And you know, in having children, do you feel like in the act or in the perception you are now in for having your children, do you feel like being able to see the physical manifestation and representation of your seed, you know, to be able to see that sexual energy come into being, do you feel like that has really profoundly impacted your views on the energy, and where do you feel like somebody who hasn't had that experience might lack in that perception, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I do see it big time, and it's interesting how they're all very unique every child is completely unique, you know, and I just think of the different sort of context all of my boys were in before they were born, and the way it came out to the expression of their being, you know, and you know, things that if I had the wisdom I have now that I would have, you know, applied when I was younger, you know. But that's the thing about youth. It's just kind of, you just, and it's something that should be encouraged. You're failing in, you know, your way forward. You know what I mean? But the idea, you know, I think, you know, books or just sharing the wisdom that you accrue in life to the next generation is to actually, you know, like any teacher is like a time machine. Like you can, if you take on the teaching, if you have a natural inclination to absorb that, then your evolution is going to, you know, go through quantum shifts, you know, because they've gone through all the pitfalls, they've gone through all these things, you know, that you haven't yet. So there's things I totally would have done differently in terms of diet, in terms of thought, you know, like, you know, this whole worry I had about being able to sustain my family and, you know, be abundant and have them have, like, our family has always had everything we've needed. We've eaten organic. We have a nice place in the country, you know, but there's been, between myself and my partner, like she grew up, you know, very poor, you know, and very much in a sense of lack, you know, and if we could have solved that in ourselves first, you know, before having children, then I think it would have impacted their life in another way, where they would feel more, because they're all brilliant. I see them as being really brilliant, really creative people, but, you know, it's just like my own self, like the doubts, the self-doubt is what keeps us from, you know, actualizing our full potential.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we
And
all have infinite potential, but we also have all these doubts that have been either seeded in us or ones that we've created from our experience.
right. And how do you feel like ultimately you were able to solve that equation within yourself in this time when you were able to uproot or kind of de-weed, you know, the garden of your mind in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's just been an ongoing process, you know, and it's been a blessing, you know, and a freeing process, and being able to share that with other people, you know, and my kids, you know, has been great, you know. But it's that whole thing of like, it's an interesting thing too with respect to the transmission of, you know, information and wisdom, is that, you know, you got to have an empty cup on the one hand, and you have to have a cup that is willing to receive, you know, the proper vessel for the proper, you know, wisdom, essentially. You know, like that old saying that when the student is ready, the master will appear, you know, and that I can't personally take on too much of like my children's evolution. They have their own soul prerogative and their own evolution they're seeking, and I can just be an example and share the information and the place that I'm coming from, you know, and then, you know, if they hook onto that, I'm willing to pour everything I can into them, you know, into that. But otherwise, it's like trying to force it, you know, and you're pouring into a full cup and it's just spilling, you know. And so, moreover, it's like finding people who, you know, who are open vessels, ready to receive, and just sharing that with anyone. There comes a time you develop yourself and you develop your knowledge that it's like pouring off. It has to pour off somewhere, you know. So you got to find vessels for it, but and those vessels want it and they want to receive, you know. And so we have to, you know, on the one hand, if you're a vessel, you have to cultivate yourself as a vessel, you know, kind of clean yourself up and get yourself ready and empty out and be ready, prepared to receive, you know. And if you're flowing, you know, a fountain, then, you know, you have to be trying not to push it into places where it doesn't belong.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's not like it's going to run off and pour over and be, you know, there's that other Egyptian or saying from Hermes Trismegistus is like, don't cast your pearls before swine, you know, who will trample them in the mud, you know. So.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's actually a beautiful example of the way that I see you, you know, the way that you're always giving the receptivity of information, receiving the information, but also sharing the information. You know, like they say, sharing is caring. Not only do you receive, but you also give, and you keep that cycle going, you keep that cycle flowing, not only on here live with us, you know, but also on your story, you know, on your page, on your platform. You're always projecting positive energy and just kind of changing someone's perspective, you know, up leveling someone's perception. I've even noticed that you put up different sayings, like wise nuggets of wisdom from different teachings, you know, that you're reaching. Like, okay, one of them might be from, you know, like you said, Greek philosophers, or something maybe very stoic, like from Stoicism, you know, Marcus Aurelius over here, you know, Socrates and Plato and Seneca over here. And then you have the Egyptian Book of the Dead right here. And then over here, you're putting in Lao Tzu, you know, the Tao Te Ching. Like, so where do you feel like all this abundance of wisdom and information that you have taken, what do you feel like they all coincide? What's the message that you feel resides within each one?
That's such a good question. Wow. You're so good. You're so good, Jerome. That's a powerful thing to think about, because I really feel like all these truths connect, and there's definitely places where you can like clearly identify, you know. And I mean, ultimately, one of the things that comes to mind is sort of that ancient thought of know thyself, you know. It's all just pointing at stuff we already know. You know, we all have all the knowing in us already, you know. I find myself saying, you know, a lot. That's my but it's also, I think, me acknowledging that you know, you know. That everyone knows that we're all, you know, gifted the guidance that we need. It's all already inside of us, you know, and we just have to trust it. And all these other, like all these sayings and stuff like that are just like little reminders of this or that aspect of us remembering that we are, you know, the incarnate gods, if you will, you know, that God consciousness or life force energy is pouring through us and needs expression, and it needs to flow, it needs to come in, and it needs to go out. And you know, Kazu and I were talking yesterday about how everything is letting go. It's a process of letting go, you know, and that because the thing, you know, it's just that thing of the things that the thoughts, the feelings, the inspirations and desires, they all have to come in and go out, you know. You can't hold on to any of it. It's that whole thing of like energy, a resistor, you know, a resistor will burn out trying to resist too much energy. It'll break, you know.
Right. If someone were, like, if someone were to keep inhaling, you know, they kept inhaling and they never exhaled, you know.
That's a very good example. Yes, totally.
Yeah. Or the opposite, you know, if you kept exhaling but you never brought any air in, you know, that'd be another tragic situation.
It's actually impossible. It's just an impossibility. And I think that's the great part, that's the great deal of the bigger portion of the pain we go through as human beings, is resisting either our attraction to something that we want really bad and we're grasping onto that wanting, or the resistance of something we don't want that we're pushing away, instead of just letting it all come and then go also. You know, the things we love, the people we love, you know, they come and they go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the relationships, the money, whatever it is, it comes in and then it goes out.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So where do you feel like you find balance when it comes to, okay, already feeling that sense of freedom, feeling that sense of fulfillment, but then still wanting to expand, still feeling like there's more to learn, there's more to know, there's more to grow. Where do you find that, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's another super good question. That's like the thing of like, uh, we are constantly meant to grow like a tree. You know, if you're not growing, you're dying. You know, and that is the fulfillment. At the same time, I feel like, uh, the being more in love with the process than the product. You know, there's this idea that I think people have in mind that someday they're going to arrive, you know, at the end goal. But just like a book, when you finish a book, it's over. The fun part is in the pages that are in the in between, right? You know, um, or like a journey. You know, you go see a show with your buds, and you go jump in the car for a road trip. The road trip is just as much fun as getting to the concert and seeing the concert.
Right,
Once the concert's over, you go back home. You know,
right,
um,
right.
but it never ends. You know, and even going home, that's a whole nother journey. And then you get home, and then another journey starts. You know, and it's like, you know, just being in love. That's been the big theme for me, is the process, being in love more with the process of things, the process
Mm-hmm.
of building a relationship with you online, on social media, here in front of everybody, as we have our hearts and thoughts out. You know, it's a wonderful process. And you know, who cares if anybody like sees it or gets anything from it? I'm enjoying just talking with you and,
Likewise.
and listening to your questions and like digging in deep, you know, um, and that has fulfillment in it, you know.
Likewise, I agree. And I love what you said, Jesse, about the fun part is in the pages, you know? It's in the spaces in between. Like that's what makes it all have even more meaning, as you're reading it. It's not about like necessarily the beginning or the end, but in between, what's going on in the middle. So what would you say, how would you differ or differentiate complacency and contentment? Where do these two words, you know what I mean?
There's a massive difference, you know.
Okay.
Complacency, or even, you know, what's the other word I'm thinking of? Well, complacency is good enough, but you know, apathy, that's what I'm looking for, you know, of just like, yeah, it's good enough. Or, you know, like you have mentioned before, the enemy of the great is the good. You know, like, it's okay, it's all right. We're not here to live okay, it's okay lives. We're here to live great lives, right? Everyone wants a great life, you know. No one wants a mediocre life. Like, oh, I'll take mediocre, please. You know, no, that's not good enough. You know. So contentment is going after that great life, falling in love in the process, having, you know, not just having it just be peachy all the time, going through the trials, going through the difficulty. That's just as juicy a part as, you know, all the fun and the high life. And, you know, it's, we like, as human beings, we like a challenge. We like to be able to grow, to test ourselves, to see what we're made of, to see what we can do, what we can't, to stretch and grow, you know. And that is fulfilling, you know. That is contentment. But if you just go, yeah, it's good enough, you know, you're not going to grow. You're not going to feel challenged. You're not going to feel, you know, that energy that comes in. And you're like, wow, I just did that thing. Well, I didn't know I could do that, you know. Or like building
Okay.
a skill, like with music, you know. You and I both play music. It's like, you're not going to sit down at the piano first time and play like some Beethoven or something like that. You're going to start with like chopsticks, or like Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know. And you have
Right.
to, like, you know, build it up, you know. And there's
Okay.
trials in there. But then when you're able to play something like Beethoven, I mean, that's not necessarily my cup of tea, but you know, that high level of music, then there's like such fulfillment and gratification in the skill you built in the process of creating your ability through your focus, your intention, your consistency, your commitment. You know, those are the things.
Okay, so you're saying, like, what I'm hearing is contentment is almost saying, like, we are complete, but we are not finished. Like we're whole, but there's still more work to be done.
You're a masterpiece and a work in progress simultaneously.
Okay. And you can be both.
Yes.
Okay.
We are both at all times.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So it's okay to be fulfilled and still, you know, be on the journey, be on the way. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm content, but I'm not complacent. You know, I'm content, but I still want more. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely,
Okay.
definitely. It's, you know, we can always. That's what we're here to do. I think is to evolve, to grow. I think that's the main, you know, source of our contentment and fulfillment is evolution. Getting out of your comfort zone is actually very, very natural to us, and that's where like all the fire and excitement of life comes in. When, you know, it's when your voice is shaking and you're speaking your truth, or you're singing for the first time in front of people, or something like that. You know, where I like what Devon says. Devon, you know, Black Airbender. He says, "Fear is excitement without the breath." You know, that everything is just exciting. You know, and our fears, you know, are essentially just a place where we have resistance. You know, to doing what we want to do, to doing what we need to, or that we sense we need to do. You know.
Okay. So, you know, earlier I noticed when you were talking with Nabiha, you were talking about, you know, I don't care how many lifetimes it takes, you know, even if I have to keep coming back, I'm still on mission, you know, I'm still feeling like I want to do this to be able, for the good of all, for the good of everyone, you know? And there's this talk about our full potential, you know, living up to your full potential. What is your fullest potential? Becoming your best version. And there's always a constant seeking or reaching for whatever that is, you know, because we make up in our minds what that may be. And with all the people, the enlightened beings, the sages, the, you know, the enlightened masters, the people that you've seen, you know, the Milarepa, the Buddha, or maybe even the Mahatma Gandhis, do you feel like these people reach their full potential, or do you feel like there could have been more for them?
I honestly feel that that's part of, you know, as a Buddhist, but it's not even just as a Buddhist. I just feel like this thing of reincarnation is real. Like I was talking about with Nabiha too. I know I've lived many lifetimes in this life, different incarnations of myself, you know, and that we're like a phoenix being born, rising, you know, and then dying again and being reborn from the ashes of what we were before, you know. And that there's this constant transformation, you know, transformers, you know, this constant transformation going on, you know, and that we're. Have you ever read The Law of One material?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you might really enjoy it. The whole idea, it was channeled, you know, by some people in the 80s, and the whole idea is that God broke himself or herself itself into it was lonely. It was, you know, one you know, omnipresent being just kind of floating in space, and it broke itself into a million pieces. You know, think of like the Big Bang. You know, sorry. To have more varied experience and to have kind of reflections of of itself with the other beings and galaxies and stars and all these things, you know, and that you know, it's something that comes to mind to me of something that I think is happening with the physics of like this universe that we're in, is just like the breath, and expansion and contraction, you know, that we're all one as we are, but we've exploded out into this myriad of forms, you know, to have this varied, see the different beautiful flowers and the moon, and, you know, the animals and the other people, and, you know, so there's this whole dance going on, you know, of vibration and energy that's, you know, going through these different incarnations, and that everything is on this trajectory of perfection. You know, it's the Fibonacci, which never arrives at this perfect number. It always is getting closer to perfection, but it's an infinite number. It's an infinite thing, you know, and we are infinite beings in this infinite universe, and so our potential is infinite. So as an infinite being with infinite karma and infinite potential, you're never going to get it done. It's never going to be an ending. It's always going to be in process towards greater perfection, you know,
right.
And it's inevitable. It's
yeah. That was the line. That was the line, Jesse. That was, you know, what Agent Smith told Neo in the Matrix. Yeah. It is inevitable, right? Mr. Anderson, you know, yeah. It is inevitable. He told him, you know, it's like he wasn't lying, but that's what he said.
Yeah,
it's inevitable. You know?
It's the dark and the light. It's all of it. It's the good. It's the bad. It's, you know, all the things all have to happen because it's part of the growing and the perfection, the learning, you know, of through contrast.
Wow.
So I'm just gonna let my dog in real quick.
Wow. And within, you know, even within the perfection of imperfection, you still find peace. You know, I love that about you.
Know? Yeah. That's the thing to cultivate, right? I mean, it's this whole thing of like emotion and difficulty and trials and, you know, all of it is to just be okay. It just be an acceptance of things, you know, as they are. When you don't like how they're going, and when you do like how they're going, because no amount of pushing against it or, you know, pulling for it is going to bring it in. It's all happening anyway.
Right.
So
they drilled that into us, you know, when I was in Vipassana on that retreat. That was one thing that Goenka, listening to his discourses from the past, they kept drilling that into us, that message of Sata, as it is, as it is. He kept saying it over and over, as it is, you know, until you finally would get it, like the idea of just as it is would start to sink in, and not as you would like it to be, as you'd want it to be, as you'd wish it to be, but as it is, you know? That was a big one. That's
the piece, man. And it's like, I think of it also as like, you know, in terms of like our toroidal field, our electromagnetic toroidal field, you know, it's this powerful electromagnetic field, you know, it's spinning, and, you know, it's like there's like a tornado going through your top and also through your bottom, this, right? And it meets in your heart. And if you think about, like, for instance, like a hurricane, in the eye of the storm, it's still. There's all this energy and power. It's the same form as this toroidal field that your electromagnetic being is. So the emotion is essentially that you're not in the eye of the storm, right? You're out in the edge and you're being whipped around by like your passion or your anger or your sadness, or, you know, that's overwhelming you. It's this powerful energy. But in the center, it's still, it's quiet, you know. So there's this whole meditation I've been working with for years, this Vajrayogini heart meditation, where you focus your you know, mind on your physical heart, and you imagine or visualize that there's this feminine Buddha that lives in your heart, you know, and you're simply just breathing and putting your sense awareness on your heart and getting more practiced at being in our heart instead of in our head, you know, and that there's a big difference because this is all, you know, right brain, left brain, judging, good, bad, should I, shouldn't I, future, past, you know. In your heart, everybody knows when you know something in your heart, you know it without a doubt. There's no question, you know, those things that you know in your heart.
I love
You know.
it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, you know, out of the head space and into the heart space, you know. That's the message that we need right now. And I know that people echo that, you know. I would love to just touch on a few things that folks have been saying. These lovely
Yeah,
folks have been just dropping so much love in here. Fruit Liquid Light. So we have Diana said Dharma is boundless. You know, when we were talking about your greatest version or your full potential, she said Dharma is boundless. Does that resonate with you?
totally. Totally. We are boundless. We are limitless beings. We are actually connected through quantum entanglement to the entire universe, you know. So your body right now is tracking asteroids and things like running around, you know, in the outer Van Allen belt, and you know, like
Right now.
right now, every one of our bodies it's that as above, so below, as within, so without. We are a fractal hologram of everything. So we are connected with everything that's going on in the universe right now, and we're sensing it with our bodies and our minds. You know. It might not have like a conscious awareness of it, but your subconscious mind, your body is aware of it, you know.
That's amazing. You know, you really remind me, Jesse, when you speak of the as above, so below, as within, so without. You know, we see that there's a world and a universe out here, and we sometimes forget that there's a world and a universe in here. You know, like, I remember there was a movie with Chris Rock. He was a white blood cell in this movie called Osmosis Jones. You ever seen Osmosis
Oh
Jones?
wow, yeah, that's way back in the '90s movie. Yeah, heck yeah. I haven't seen
Yeah,
it since then, but yeah, I should rewatch
yeah.
that.
Back in the 90s. I'm a 90s baby.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I was born in 1990. So
Oh,
when I
okay.
watched Osmosis Jones, it showed me that there was a whole world inside one body. You know, it was the whole movie took place inside one person's body. You
Right.
know, the entire was just in his body, and that showed like the highways and the traffic and the moving, the red blood cells and the white blood cells, and there was just so much going on in the body that he was unaware of. He was totally oblivious that his body was doing everything that it could to keep him in balance, you know, to keep him in homeostasis. And there was just a whole civilization going on in there. And that everything, every foreign element, everything that he allowed into his vessel, that he consumed and brought into his body, had to integrate with that system. You know, they had to assimilate into that inner matrix. And some of the things that he put in his body, well, a lot of the things were very harmful, you know, very like they caused catastrophes, you know, they were very cataclysmic to the vessel, and they caused, you know, a lot of these things. But that was one of the movies that came to my mind when you said that, you know.
That's interesting. Totally reminds me of the Breatharian Path and stuff. I should rewatch that movie. You know, you and I know this from our own experience just in life, but then also moving into these higher states of health, you know, through breatharianism and the pranic lifestyle, you know, of just like actually the less you can take in, the more in balance your body is, you know, and your consciousness. You know, it's that whole thing of you got to sync up your consciousness and your body in balance, you know, because, you know, it's like a lot of people are talking about, you know, I'm definitely of this same mind of like, you know, Dr. Sebi, Dr. Robert Morse, you know, acidity versus alkalinity, and this acidity in our body creates mucus, plugs up the lymphatic system, you know, starts causing this chaos, you know, in our body. We can also create acid in our body with our thoughts and our words, you know, and a lot of people will be super conscientious on what they're putting in here, but then they're not being as conscientious maybe as they could be with their thoughts and their words, you know, and that's where being a wordsmith and being, you know, careful through practicing meditation with your thinking and the way you direct your thought, and the wisdom of being a heart being and being more connected with your heart than being, you know, a rational being or a smart being.
Right.
You know, it's better to be kind than it is to be right. It's, and the place of your heart is courage and compassion and wisdom. Whereas your head, I think everyone could say, yeah, my head kind of screwed me over on that, you know, kind of ran me around for a while, you know. But your heart knows, and your heart is this caring place, you know, and the more we can change that vibration in our own selves and then bring that into the world, the more we're transforming the whole universe, you know, to be a more compassionate, loving, you know, world.
I agree. That is so profound. You know, you're the one that taught me, Jesse, that, you know, just like you said, you taught me it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. You know, that feeling of kindness, that spreading kindness, spreading love, spreading compassion, in the spreading of these things, that, you know, it's its own reward, you know? Yeah.
It is. It's, you know, with all of us being, you know, one, you know, I think of like the fingers on a hand. Like if you sever all the fingers, you don't have a hand anymore. We're all, you know, it's like members of our community, is like members of our body, you know, and to remember, you know, is to remember that we are all one, you know. And so when you do something nice for someone else, a lot of people experience, I think everybody who authentically comes doing something nice for someone else, they feel as much benefit, if not more, than the person who receives the benefit. You know?
Yeah. And you know what I also found out? And I'm sure that you already know this, Jesse, you know, given what I know about you. But when it comes to those feel-good chemicals, you know, the serotonin, the oxytocin, like all those feel-good things that we receive when we do something good for someone, that they receive when we also, like the giver and the receiver both receive, right? But then even the onlooker, someone said even somebody noticing the act of generosity receives from that generosity. I said, whoa, that's amazing, right?
Yes.
Just for somebody to just witness it, it affects them on that level, you know?
And we can all be generous. It doesn't have to be like a monetary thing. You can like be generous with compliments, be generous with smiles or hugs, you know, be just, you know, that whole word generous is connected with generate, right? You know, generate your art, generate the things you love to put in the world, you know, be generous, you know, with you are once again like an infinite being with infinite energy. Why are you holding on to it for? You know? Give it away.
Give it away now.
Yeah,
Right?
that's exactly what I was gonna start saying. Give it away, give it away, give it away now.
Yeah.
Give it away, give it away, give it away now.
You know, oh my gosh, you know, so it's just like what did Pablo Picasso say? You know, the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. You know, give it away. It's like, don't hold on to it, don't harbor it, don't hoard it, but give it away. You know, you can afford it. Don't hoard it. You know, let it go. You let it flow and let it grow. And multiple people can receive that energy. You know, just like you said, I love the usage of words. You know, even the etymology, just listening to that, like, okay, be generous. And within that generosity, you generate. And within that generating, you affect the generation. You know, the whole generation and the next generation is affected from what you are generating with your generosity. Come on now. This is great. We got church here today. Come on.
Yes, blessed love, one perfect love. That's it. That's totally it. You know, we are creators, not consumers. We've been sold the wrong thought. You're not a consumer, one and all. Every person here is a creator, a generator, you know, that, and the source, Kazu and I were talking about this yesterday too. I love talks with Kazu. I love Kazu. We were talking about, you know, the whole thing of like breatharianism and energy, and that I truly believe there is a 0-point energy device inside your chest, which is your heart, and that what the 0-point energy is love. You know, how many songs have been written about love? How many people were willing to give their life for love? You know, it's love that we're all after. It's love that really drives things. Most abundant, most important energy in the universe is love. And the more of it we create, the more and give, the more there is, you know, and the more we get to experience of that love. And like Eliton was talking about, we did that meditation, and he was talking at first all about life energy. And we did a meditation, and he said, you know what? Life energy is love energy. And it was like, yeah, that's right.
I love that you've been like, yeah. You know, it's like something stirs up within you, you know, somebody stirs your spirit, you know, shakes your soul. It's like, yeah. Oh, man.
No doubt. No doubt. That's the stuff. It's,
yeah.
You know, it's, I think that is the fulfillment, you know, and to give your gifts to, you know, the things that you're moved to do are things that you're moved to do because, you know, I always say this, you know, your gifts aren't make you special. They're what you're meant to give. It's what you love and what you want to see more of in the world, you know. So, you know, just falling in love, like we've been talking about, with that process of like chasing the things that inspire you, you know, of, you know, then reaping those fruits, you know, that was the thing for me in my experiences, like moving towards permaculture and urban, moving towards breatharianism and consciousness and meditation and stuff. Like, I just feel like I'm just scratching the surface. Like, I just know a little, you know, very little. There's so much more. Yeah. There's so much more, you know. And so it's, you know, it's that whole process, falling in love with that process in the long term. It's being like, I mean, I remember feeling this about gardening, you know, and herbalism. Both is like, I could do this my whole life, or music, and even at the end of my life, there would still be so much more to learn, you know, and the whole time it would be growth and it would be juicy, you know. And so looking for this.
Yeah, I feel the same way, you know, about this instrument, you know. That was one of the things that attracted me to this, because it was so difficult. Like, at first, when I finally caught on and I found out just how simple it was in its difficulty, like, all I had to do was just tweak just something a little bit. It just expanded the whole thing for me. And I was like, wow, I could literally spend the rest of my life, you know, just playing this thing. So that was one of the things that I felt like, okay, I could just devote to this instrument, you know, and find so many intricacies within this one thing, you know. From one thing, you can know 10,000 things from one thing.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I love it. I love it.
Wow. So, I mean, it sounds like when you follow your bliss, you can't miss.
Yeah,
you know?
That's right. That's right. Follow your bliss, everyone. You're meant to live it. You're meant to experience it. You're meant to feel in love. You're meant to feel in bliss. You know, all of those trials are mostly our resistance to bliss. That it's actually trying to come into, you know, and we're taking that view and judgment from our past, where we're like, no, that's not good. I don't want that. It's always trying to come to you, you know. And so.
Wow. Thank you. You know, thank you for that timely message. Thank you for these reminders, you know, for this wisdom that you give to us, you know, so effortlessly and consistently. You're consistently giving us this wisdom. And thank you to everyone who joined us. I know so many people had, I don't even know questions for you. Okay. Yeah, they were just saying so many things echoing. Love
Yeah.
thy father, love thy neighbor. Who was that guy? Aang. Oh, they're talking about Avatar. Doing things. I would do anything for love. I run right into hell and back. Wow. Okay. All we need is love. Generating manifested. So yeah, they're echoing that sentiment. You know, they're echoing what you were talking about. What the world needs now, you know, is love. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
One love, one heart.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get together and feel all right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is the message for the day, and you know, just thank you for being a conduit. Thank you for being a channel to allow it to flow in that unique way. You know, thank you.
My pleasure, Jerome. Thank you as well for you sharing your heart and your thoughtful, you know, words and questions, and you know, I just really appreciate these builds because it gives me an opportunity to connect with you more and just love you more as my brother, and it's a vibe. I love doing the same with Nabiha. It's like anyone, I jam with anybody.
Absolutely.
But you are special to me for sure, brother. For sure.
All right. So we'll do it again. We'll do it again.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, indeed. All right. Blessing. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Jerome. Love you.
See you.